and canning up, and I just want to finish that conversation because I feel like we didn't, but it's okay. We are now loaded into the game, and in the top right-hand side of the map, it is the red Terran player for Alpha X, Future.
And down here in the bottom left-hand side of the map, we have our blue Protoss player. He is PattyMac, Cranky Ducklings. Of course I keep bringing up M. Canning. M. Canning.
You said he's the third generation of players, right? Like,
oh, yeah.
And you said he started like competing like late, but I know I've competed against M. Canning, and I stopped competing like 5+ years ago. Right, and I know I've competed against M. Canning. I've like watched interviews of M. Canning. Like, I don't know what to expect against Cat, right? Type thing. So, like, you know, in that sense, I just can't fit him onto the latest wave of players.
I would agree. I think he was like pretty borderline and stuff. But in my mind, like, there's also a difference between when you say like you're a like, let me put it this way: Peely and Jon Snow were both competing in 2011. Like, they were competing in the era of Huck and Idra and everything, but they aren't in that first generation because that's not when they were like actually strong competitive players that were playing in like the big circuits events and stuff.
I see.
M. Canning, I think he started making it into like WCSs and things like that for more than just like a one-off showing. I think closer to the 2018, 2019 era and stuff. Not like 2014, 2015 when Jon Snow and stuff was and Peely were advancing in there in like 2014. Was my thought.
He did compete in Nation Wars, I think, earlier than that, right? And maybe 1 or 2 seasons of WCS.
He did, and I'm not going to take it away from him. M. Canning did great overall, but that was also a fan vote, for example, right?
Fair enough. All right, well, we have the openers here. It's going to be double gateway opening, not the standard tier from PattyMac, who's going to be going into double adepts. And again, both of these players expect uniqueness from them. As far as playstyle is concerned, PattyMac will tend to be a little bit trickier, whereas Future will tend to be a little bit more about kind of displaying his micro ability and just, you know, like kind of just working with what units he has, which is what kind of Terran just thrives off of as a race. So Future really leans heavily on that. Wouldn't be surprised if we see an SCV pool or 2 during this series.
Yeah, and Waterfall would be the short rush distance map for something like that to potentially be kind of strong. I really want to know how PattyMac is going to actually approach the series more than anything else, because I'm expecting Future to get a bit up in PattyMac's face. I think that's just so very much his style that it's going to be kind of a question to me of how PattyMac decides to respond to that. And so far, I mean, it's just kind of Twilight Council opening, the Adepts poking forward and getting some really good scouting information as well.
Yeah, he's going to try to time the Shade here to proc the Widowmine if he can. Not going to work out this time around for him. A little bit too risky going up that ramp without vision. But yeah, I mean, PattyMac does have the advantage of having moved across with these Adepts and kind of knowing what his opponent is doing. And Future has the disadvantage, by contrast, of having started mines from his factory as opposed to a Cyclone or a tank, which would easily dislodge these Adepts. Like, these Marines are not going to have the easiest time fighting the Adepts if they focus fire them, which means that the expanding potential for Future is really going to be kind of stalled here by the forces of PattyMac just sitting here. So these Widow Mines have to do something on economic grounds, or otherwise PattyMac is going to be starting to pull a little bit further ahead than Future can contend with.
I mean, I already like how this was played out a lot more for PattyMac, just because he has the information about the Widow Mines and stuff going to be coming. Like you said, he's denying the mining and stuff, and all he has to do is handle the Widow Mine drop. And the kind of unfortunate reality for Widow Mines is even if your opponent doesn't have a lot of units back at home, you can always control really well and only lose. I was going to say 1 probe per Widow Mine, but it looks like it'll be a little bit more than that. And I love the timing of Future to move down during it.
Yeah. I mean, he's trying to surprise his opponent and rely on his mistakes. But PattyMac, like we were talking about, is going to be very strong against these Marines. A little bit sad for PattyMac is that when he spots that Widowmine drop on the other side of the map, he actually drops the ball on the positioning of the Adepts, because this command center did not have to land at all, right? Like, the Adepts were to the side of it. If they had just been planted right under where it wants to land, then the CC can't land. And if it can't land, it can't produce SCVs, which means right now it would be landing, right? Which means you would have like 3 less SCVs if your Future who started producing SCVs right after it landed. So A little bit of a misstep there from PattyMac, and otherwise, yeah, pretty cool game. And this is what I was talking about. Both of these players are going to be looking for those mental edges, right? It's like, oh, you're not looking here, let me go down this ramp, even though it's not an engagement that I should take. Should you be paying attention?
Yeah, that's entirely fair. I think that he was definitely counting on PattyMac to not quite notice, but it did seem like he was at least able to pick off one or two of the adepts before PattyMac was able to respond. And the Liberator siege up is, yeah, that was not ideal, I would say, for Future.
An unfortunate situation. You can see the cogs turning again, though, right? Like that probe, maybe you would usually let it go, but you know it's a probe that wants to take a third, so it also delays the third. And it spotted your Liberator, so I don't mind the sieging. The problem for him is he didn't anticipate the Stalkers being that nearby or having Blink. So the Liberator falls for its sins. And the game continues on as the next set of Stalkers are going to blink into the main, going to get near the tank, but not before it shells at them 3 times, killing one of them and bruising the rest of them for the Marines to be able to displace potentially. It's still very close here.
Oh man, it feels like PattyMac is starting to find quite a bit of ground over here. Although the aggressive blink forward is going to be an interesting choice, as he does try to dive forward, but doesn't actually focus fire down the siege tank or anything, just goes after more of the Marines. So I don't know how I feel about that blink forward, but I still feel like, I was going to say that I still felt like things were okay-ish for PattyMac, but I don't know. I actually like Future's position a lot now after that.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, PattyMac is still taking his third base here. Future will get rid of that very annoying observer and has a well-positioned tank now at his natural. But there are still susceptible areas. The problem for PattyMac is he used so much of his army during that he doesn't really have that many tools other than perhaps to contain Future for the time being, while he establishes his forge, his extra production, and starts probing up to his third. So it's now on Future, and we see already in his base that there is a lack of a third command center. So Future will be moving out most likely towards the third area of PattyMac or towards the natural to contest the in-between, and should be looking for a kill within the next minute or two.
Yeah, I think that's going to be an extremely scary push out that Future is gearing up for. And I'm a little worried that PattyMac has lost a lot of his Stalkers during that kind of pressure. He didn't quite trade out versus enough of the siege tanks or the core units there for Future. So we'll see. These Stalkers have got to continue to pick away at this army as it moves across the map and try and delay it, because Waterfall just does not give you a lot of time. Some charge lots are going to be here, but charge is not done for another, 18, 19 seconds?
That should be pretty soon, especially if he chrono boosts that. I think he'll have it, but this is a difficult position to dislodge right now. Why is he engaging before charge is done? Oh my god, he could have waited like 5 more seconds here or less. Now charge is finished. But yeah, I mean, those trades were not it. I guess PattyMac really didn't want to concede this ground. The Immortal, and a very important piece to get onto that tank and to maybe find the Marauders otherwise. But this is much more difficult, having wasted those few Zealots there.
Zelts are going to be able to find the siege tank on the back lines. Widowmine goes off on not a whole lot, and Future is starting to get dislodged over here. Widowmine's going to start burrowing on the reinforcing path, but that is not where the fight is happening, and we end up seeing that PattyMac is able to get a pretty decent cleanup here. The kind of question for me, though, is does PattyMac have enough to actually overpower the entirety of Future's reinforcements? Because Future did get a third behind this. He wasn't entirely all in, and I just feel like PattyMac is not actually really probed up or even teched up behind any of this.
Yeah, I mean, he started a third behind this, but it's not nearly completed. But like you said, PattyMac hasn't really been probing up himself just to try to absorb this attack, and Future somewhat playing off of his reputation, dropping that third as well, right? So PattyMac probably expecting the SCV pool, which I still wouldn't mind. Future not refocus target firing with those Widowmines, but it's not going to matter as the Zealot is going to move away from the army of Future, and therefore not splashing it. So yeah, I mean, looking pretty good for Future still.
Definitely feels like he has a bit of momentum and control in this game, and he is not quite able to break through PattyMac, and PattyMac's about to have a +1 weapons upgrade finished up. Has some degrees of tech on the way, but it is just pure gateway with 2 Immortals to kind of act as the linchpin for this army. If Future is able to ever break through the Zealot lines over here and get in on top of those Immortals, I'm actually really afraid for PattyMac. Actually, Cats, I'm really afraid for PattyMac right now.
Yeah, you should be. I mean, the Zealots are already being thinned out. PattyMac trying to throw 2 at a time in order to absorb the Widowmine shot, but Future kills them before they can. So now Future is just kiting. Future doesn't need to engage here. PattyMac is in crisis mode. He doesn't have, like you were mentioning, any real tech. So Future if you are him, I think if you can retreat here, regroup, and just push in a minute or two even. I mean, knowing Future, he won't even wait because he probably sees the opportunity. But right now, Future can try to regroup and just make sure that he kills PattyMac. I mean, he just got rid of that Immortal as well. He knows that the battery is down. This wouldn't be a bad moment to push on the gas pedal either.
I mean, the supplies really do tell the tale. There might be DTs moving across the map, but he is 74 army supply to 22 right now. Cats, he is nearly 4 times the army size of PattyMac right now. These DTs, they have to not just win the game, they have to annihilate somehow Future's entire economy and his entire army. And I just don't know that they're going to be able to do both of those.
Yeah, they're going to be not able to do either of those, in fact. And now it's going to be Future that just regroups. Like I was saying, like there's no need really for him to you know, throw caution to the wind and just go for it. He could have, and he probably would have killed his opponent. But with his move out, after dealing with those DTs, with his entire army, there is no chance in hell for PattyMac to hold here.
PattyMac's going to try and send some more DTs across the map. But yeah, his army is looking pretty meager. He's going to try and set up a nice little flanking position with the charge loss coming in from both the natural and the third base. And that's exactly where Future pushes in from. But Future is just going to move on forward. Widow Mines, will they friendly fire? No, it doesn't look like it. Zealots even end up pulling back at the worst possible moment there for the friendly fire to actually happen. Future, yeah, he's just demolishing us.
Yeah, this one's done. And I mean, to your point, I think that has happened multiple times in this game where PattyMac assesses an engagement kind of incorrectly, and then on the retreat you're always going to get taxed, right? Because those zealots have already used their charge, they're slow, they're melee, so that means obviously when you engage, you're paying the tax of getting hit by those ranged units, right? While you're not attacking. And on retreat, it's the same tax that you pay twice, only you're not going to deal damage after the fact. So it's just kind of a lose-lose situation. You got to be ready to kind of take those engagements all the way if you're PattyMac, and be a little bit more decisive, essentially.
Well played there by Future in game number 1. He manages to do like a little bit of that early game defense against some mild aggression, but then it's when he moves out with his own attack, it is just constant 4 or 5 minutes of pressure, and PattyMac eventually ends up crumbling under it.
Yeah, really well done indeed from the side of Future here, as the next map is going to be Inside and Out.
I have to say, I think there was another thing that did have me a little bit worried for a lot of that, which is when PattyMac, it felt like he was making moves that were setting himself up for like later, longer term play and stuff. It kind of felt like he was, this may have been like an intentional decision or something. Maybe he was just focused on making more units and stuff, but he would end up in situations where I think, oh yeah, he's like taking some decent trades. And I look back at his worker count, and I look at his worker production and stuff. It's like, oh, he wasn't making workers consistently throughout all of that. He was making like maybe 1 worker from one of his nexus, but not like on all 3 nexus, consistently churning those out, where I feel like it's the situations that I would see a lot of other Protoss players that, you know, like a Showtime or something. It's like, oh, there's an attack going, there's some harass going with the adepts or something that's keeping your opponent at home. But behind it, he's also making 3 workers at a time. And then at the end of everything, it's like, oh, okay, Showtime has like a bit of a worker lead. Now he can sit back safely and just think about defending because he has something to protect now. And I would look back in those situations and think, well, PattyMac didn't like secure himself an economic lead in that game. If he had, maybe he'd feel a little bit more comfortable sitting at home.
Yeah, I think that was a conscious decision though on his part, right? Like I was saying during the game, like noting the lack of probing, that Future was playing to his reputation, dropping that third behind him, because in other games he would be pulling SCVs, and then if you're PattyMac, we would instead be wondering why was he making probes. So really the thing that was lacking there is him scouting the third when it goes down, or the area, or just having a general idea of what Future is doing with a hallucinated Phoenix or something of the likes. Is there an SCV pulling coming or not? Because otherwise I applaud the decision, right? If you think that Future is all-inning, which is very likely because it's Future and it's the shortest map in the map pool, then the right decision was just make as many units as you can right now.
Yeah, that's fair, especially if you felt like it was just actually going to be a 2-base all-in in that case. Well, guys, we're going to be heading into Inside and Out, like you said before, Cats. We're going to be starting down here on the bottom left-hand side of the map. Top of the red Terran player currently sitting up a 1-0. He is Future from Alpha X.
And spawning his opponent in the top right-hand side of the map. It is, for Cranky Ducklings, PattyMac.
Going for a 2-gate opening.
Again.
That's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very interesting. So we'll see what this amounts to.
Always can be a little scary, I think, as the Terran player, and I'm actually really curious if Future's going to go for any kind of SCV scout or anything along those lines, or if he's just going to wait for the Reaper. Looks like he'll just be waiting for the Reaper.
Yeah, I wish I had been paying a little bit closer attention to the timing. So I wonder if this is time so that you actually contest and deny the CC on the low ground, because this is a very unusual opening from PattyMac. But it's an opening that we've seen twice in a row. And last time around, it worked out pretty well, I gotta say, even though Future had the CC on the high ground. The problem for PattyMac was the aftermath, right? And how much multitasking and juggling he had to do on his end, kind of making it more difficult for those adepts to get all the value that they would have otherwise in further delaying that base and trading a little bit more efficiently. So, yeah, let's see. First adept is gonna move out right away. No stopping that shade, I would imagine.
Yeah, and you won't be able to get 2 attacks off with the Adept, so the Reaper does manage to survive. We'll be able to heal back up and try and dive in later, and I think that is one thing that is going to be annoying for Future to have to worry about is for PattyMac to worry about is that he knows that he wants to move out with his Adept, so that means that the Reaper effectively gets an almost guaranteed scout out. Unless he just runs into the reinforcing Adepts and just dies, unfortunately, that Reaper should absolutely be able to see what the follow-up is here from PattyMac.
Yeah, and Future, I mean, beautiful positioning. If you look at his entire infrastructure here, it's accounting for this opening of PattyMac, right? So kind of playing the player to some degree there, even in so far as he is positioning the buildings. Like, none of those buildings are in range where the Adepts can focus fire or kill one SCV that is building any of them. And they are also kind of denying information as far as what will come out of them. So all that PattyMac can do here with these Adepts, once again, is contain, but I don't hate it. I mean, they did pretty good at containing. They are harassing the supply depot, which could force an engagement against the Marines or SCVs to be pulled in order to heal the supply depot, but that means it's SCVs that are going to be dying, and you can see the very nice number here is going to be 3, as they will be able to... Whoa, what? How did that mine not die?
Yeah. As soon as if a projectile is in flight and then the unit becomes, burrowed or cloaked or something, then the projectile actually doesn't land.
Yeah,
so
that's
really, really narrow timing there.
That was like the last millisecond.
Super close. But that's going to be to Future's benefit for sure, because now we can actually go for a nice little drop with that. The Adepts are going to be able to block this command center from landing for a little bit, but I think the next round of...
Why is he giving up the... Okay, I was going to say... He was once again giving up the situation, the location there, but now actually will contest. Oh, misses one shot. Their one volley is huge.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a few too many Marines over here for the Adepts to deal with, as all of them, except for one, is going to go down. And the Widow Mines find 8 workers. Oh, and they get out alive.
Oh, no. And one of those Widow Mines was one attack from a probe from dying, remember? So, it would have been pretty easy to shut down in so long as you were paying attention to it if you're PattyMac. So once again, Future diverting the attention of PattyMac. This time around, it's the opposite mind game, right? Because the previous game, he kind of distracts for the Marines to take an unfavorable engagement against the Adepts. This time, he sends in the Marines against the Adepts first for the Widow Mines to strike in the back, and it works out beautifully for him. Because again, very easy to just grab a bunch of probes and attack those Widow Mines, and they die. You don't even need any units there because the Widow Mines were already so bruised up from the Adepts.
Definitely works out in the end, and Future is going to have a nice little lead. A Protoss player that is sitting at close to even worker counts with a Terran player, and the Protoss player doesn't have a third or anything else to really fall back to. That's going to be a rough spot, but there is one magical unit that PattyMac has alongside 4 gateways and a blink upgrade. That's going to be that Warp Prism. Warp Prism and Blink Stalkers can make magic happen. He needs that magic. He's going to be able to focus fire down a siege tank that's quite vulnerable over here. That's a good start.
Really, really good start. Now he has to micro against the Marines. Instead, he's going to focus fire on the SCVs for the time being. Blinking behind the Zealots is not a bad idea. blinking onto the tank might be a mistake, but we've seen him attempt that in the previous game, and he has gotten rid of 15 SCVs now. So this was a wonderful attack for PattyMac, who now puts himself 10 workers ahead, and the game will sort of stabilize. At the same time, Future does backstab with a Liberator, killing 8 probes himself. So no slouch, but PattyMac definitely gets the better end of those trades.
Yeah, killing a lot of workers, but also killing a handful of those actual army units is going to be a huge boon to PattyMac, and continues his ability to try and put on additional pressure here with the Stalkers. There's only still one Siege Tank and all those Marines out, but Stim and Combat Shields not being done means that these Stalkers can still continue to fight. Now, Liberator moves back in, is going to be able to find a couple more probes over here as the Stalkers are still maneuvering around. This actually might even delay the Stalkers from moving forward for a bit.
Yeah, there's only one Stalker there, and PattyMac is going to choose to try to out-multitask his opponent here as he moves on forward to go for the bunker as the Stalker engages onto the Liberator. So a good move as well, because it makes it more likely that the Stalker does kill the Liberator, and I wonder if it did. If we can go back there, does he have a kill? He does. So very nice, right? Like this time around, it's PattyMac who kind of uses the attention of Future.
Oh, Stim!
That is huge. If he gets it, he's going to get it. Wow.
Big denial there. That's going to be extremely painful. That was the thing that Future was waiting on so that he could finally combat against these Stalkers on even footing. And now, I mean, he is finding a handful of really, really nice pickoffs as those Stalkers getting target fired down, especially the weakened ones, even with the blink backs. But at the end of the day, PattyMac does still get out of there, having done the damage he needed to. He is still up a fair number of workers. Knows that his opponent can't really do anything without Stim for quite a while, so he just gets to play greedy behind all this.
He sure does. 4 Stalkers are going to be able to one-shot SCVs as well, so a nice little hit squad here to just elongate that advantage that he already has in the macro department as he takes his 3rd base. Another 4 Stalkers, this time around backstabbing. Got to be careful with the tank fire, so it will warn where the position of the tank is. PattyMac still with an opportunity to kill a couple of units before evacuating here, but can't be too greedy, and he will back.
Oh, this is going to be so tough for Future. He is still continuing to take damage. I don't know if this would have been the right solution, but I really wonder if just an immediate worker pull after having taken all that earlier damage would have been a viable call there, where you still have a decent bow force. Your opponent is just sitting on pure blink Stalker, and you know that their production hasn't kicked in. But I think now there's already going to be a Colossus, maybe almost a second one if you try to do a move out right now.
Yeah, we might still see it, but I have to admit that also crossed my mind right away, because it is Future as well, and it is within his wheelhouse. He will be moving out now. 4 Marauders are going to be everything that he has to contend with that one Colossus, but that's not nothing. The tank should also help, but it's usually just this one tank with his move outs, which is a little bit surprising to me. 4 Widowmines as well are going to help against potential Zealots, but there are 7 of those, so PattyMac is looking for Zealots. On the other side, there is a little bit of more harassment for PattyMac, and there is the SCVs that you were requesting, Ravi, so it's a little bit later than you and I perhaps anticipated, but it's still pretty good perhaps. It's still one of his better choices. Great force fields, however, from PattyMac are going to negate a lot of the damage, but the Widowmines are massive.
Yeah, big Widowmine connections there. I'm just a little bit concerned that I'm not sure Future has enough of a buffer anymore. I think he's already lost so many of his frontline units with those force fields. Those force fields, I think, for the saving grace. And yeah, Future even actually just pulls back his workers. I think he realizes this is not going to do it.
I mean, he agrees with you here, but I think this is a death sentence for him to back away. I think that he maybe had an opportunity. All those Protoss units are going to regenerate their shields now. You can see that a lot of them are bruised, even as far as the real HP. So that would have been the best opportunity I think that Future had, and he was already committed. All of those SCVs are going to lose mining time in retreating, and you've just put yourself in a worse position than you were. Whereas, yeah, the game might have ended, and maybe it wouldn't have been favorable, but you would have had a better chance, I think, just executing on the attack there, as you were already at the door, and you know your Widowmine's already landed, the Protoss army's already bruised.
Yeah, you know, okay, well, he's gonna have a little bit of trouble getting out of here alive, and you know, he had a second army that's in the middle of the map right now. It seemed like he was heading that over to the 3rd base. I wouldn't have minded if he had tried something where he was hitting both the main base with the drop and also hitting the 3rd base and try and rely on some multi-pronged aggression there. Nice pick off on the War Prism as well. But yeah, he ends up pulling back. There were units at the 3rd base as well, so PattyMac should have had the tools he needed to deal with the multi-pronged aggression. But I'm with you. I think this is almost going to be a kind of lose-lose situation. Future needs to force mistakes out of PattyMac at this point and somehow capitalize on them. And I just don't know that he has the ability to.
Yeah, I mean,
anymore.
this is game ending, right? Like, so that's what I mean. Like, when you back away there, it's a death sentence. If you keep pushing, at least those units are bruised. At least you have a little bit of momentum. I understand that there was a Warp Prism, but just if you pull SCVs, it's gonna be so damaging to not have a mining and then just not go for it. Another thing to note is Future never scouted the third of PattyMac, and he had a unit at the triangle third. So maybe he thinks, oh, you don't have a third, I'm just gonna pull back and we should be fine. Maybe that was the thought process, because otherwise, yeah, I just don't think that was ever gonna be a winning maneuver for him.
Really, really rough one there for Future, but a great job by PattyMac, is able to tie up the series 1-1, and is able to capitalize on some of those earlier game leads. He was able to secure himself with the Blink Stalker aggression. I mean, definitely that Blink Stalker aggression pulling him back in the game. It's hard to actually remember. It took me a moment to even realize, yeah, actually, wait, PattyMac was in a really rough spot after that early game opening, but he pulled it back with the Blink Stalkers.
Ravi, listen, life on Data C is better than anything they got up there. But we don't have Data C, unfortunately. We got Moon Dance this time around.
Was that an impression of, oh my god, I can't remember what the name of
Sebastian is in Spanish, the crab.
Sebastian, yes.
Sebastian,
oh my god. Sebastian from under
the human world is a mess. Life on Data C. Life on Data C. But it's Moon Dance.
If you decided to do an audiobook on The Little Mermaid, I would listen to it.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I would probably have
You'd
to
have at least one customer.
I think the Spanish crab is a little bit more. I like his voice a little bit better, I guess, in the songs and whatnot.
Oh, okay. That's
Disney, they translate all of their movies, so it's kind of interesting to see. Like, a lot of people just love the Spanish versions over the English versions. I am kind of torn, half and half, but yeah. I mean, we are here now on Moon Dance. Looking to dance it out in the top left-hand side of the map. It is the red Protoss player for Alpha X. Are you an Alpha? Are you an X? It is Future.
And down here in the bottom right-hand side of the map, we have our blue Protoss player able to take that last game. Can he close it out? He is PattyMac, the Cranky Ducklings.
Alpha X. They got all of the alphas.
Your story about the Spanish version of Disney movies, it just sent me on like a nostalgia spiral to when I would go visit India. And one of my favorite things was finding the American cartoons and listening to them in like all the like other language versions of them. So they'd be like Hindi, which is commonly spoken in India. Yeah. And like a lot of Bollywood speaks Hindi. And so listening to like Hindi Spider-Man is a core part of my childhood.
Right. It's very interesting for me because when I watch a movie first in English or first in Spanish, those become the voices that I regard as the real voice. And then when I listen to the other one, it always sounds like, oh, that's not the real one, Even though
I can see that.
Yeah, I much prefer, for example, Shrek in Spanish. It's DreamWorks, not Disney, but the donkey in Shrek in Spanish is fabulous. Yeah.
Eddie Murphy did a great job, I feel like, in Shrek.
Having
rewatched it recently.
Yeah, I don't even know who the donkey is in Spanish. I think it's Diego Luna or something, but yeah, I mean, he was very good. He's like, ¡Órale, Shrek! I really like him. Also, Coco in Spanish, I think, is maybe a little bit better. I watched both of those just for the experience of Spanish versus English. But one thing that I find strange is when they choose like this certain words in English, there's a little bit of aggression here. One of them will fall. So very cute response here from Future. He's gonna neglect this really nicely just for Marines. So are gonna push 2 adepts away. I feel like that wasn't meant to happen that way or that decisively anyway. But yeah, back to Coco, the more important subject here. Basically the I lost my train of thought. Let's just play the game. You laughed and I'm like, yeah, why are we talking about Coco? Yeah, it's not the most important subject. It is this bunker right here.
I really enjoyed that journey you took me on, Cats. Marines are going to be able to poke forward and try and snipe off one Adept. They do manage to get one. I don't know if the 4 Marines are going to be enough to get the second and third Adept there. They are going to be able to shade forward, snipe off one SCV, continue to force
the door's open!
Oh, but if you go in, you're trapped.
Oh, sheesh, but he thought he went in, but he didn't. Hodor in Spanish is also much better.
I actually don't know how much I like that, because yeah, now you're trapped, and one of these Adepts is so low on hit points. Like, how much are you really going to get done?
Yeah, not much. I mean, if the Adepts had kept on shading instead of just stopping there, he would have got it. He would have been able to get a few more SCVs because the Marines wouldn't have been caught on their tails. But as it stands, yeah, definitely not the right call at that point. But there wasn't a good call either way because the Adepts were trapped either way at that point, right? So just not an ideal shade.
Yeah, tough spot there. Future does manage to clean up all of those Adepts and really only loses, I think, one SCV, but loses a handful of Marines as well. I think overall, Future will probably be a little bit happier with how those trades went. And I'm curious, PattyMac is gonna start up Blink. He's adding on an extra gateway. He's going back up to 4 gateways again. So 4 gate, Blink Stalker, I imagine soon to be Warp Prism Aggression, gonna be coming Future's way yet again.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, I remember I put on Coco while we have a second here, like ofrendas, for example, is a word that they use in the English Coco a lot. But so they emphasize a lot on that word and they have it be very meaningful. It just means offerings, right? And in Spanish, they're just saying, oh yeah, ofrendas, like normally, but in English, it's like ofrendas, you know, like every time they say it, it's like they really like to emphasize it. It reminds me a little bit of the word sombrero, which just means hat, but yeah, we've taken it to mean like a very specific type of Mexican hat. Stalkers into the main. There's going to be a little bit of a tank here in a pocket. So those Stalkers are going to lose their hats as far as...
the hats being the shields that they have, I guess. A very particular kind of shield. Yeah, did the Observer... Okay, the Observer did manage to survive. I know the Future was trying to gun that down earlier on. Didn't quite find the kill there. So that's an important thing for PattyMac to save because he did not go for that Warp Prism. Despite having gotten up for the 4 gateways and everything, he really needs that to have any semblance of high ground vision. And, well, a quick tech up into Storm. All right. I feel like it's been a while since I've seen a Pros player actually do this. Yeah,
and it's very interesting against a player like Future, right? Because if you think about Future and if you think, oh, there's going to be a lot of units coming my way, it's usually just been the one tank to zone things off. And half of the time, there's going to be all of the mineral line pooled. Well, Storm is kind of fantastic against all of those things, right? So very cool adjustment here from Patricio.
This is going to be really, really scary because PattyMac is going to have this critical mass of units hitting right as Future is going to be arriving at his front door. I think he's actually going to be extremely prepared for things. Assuming he has the High Templars already warped in, and I do see 3 High Templars already out on the map. I don't know how much energy the ones in the Warp Prism already have right now.
That is the question. That is the biggest question. PattyMac should be looking for this engagement, and he's looking for the flank instead. Here they come!
Oh!
Storms, I mean, that's plenty. That's plenty. The Marines evaporate here.
Yeah.
As Future gives him a couple of ofrendas.
He's going to need a few seconds to heal up after those storms, but it doesn't look like PattyMac's going to give it to him. Another massive storm. Anti-armor missile be damned. I'm not sure that's going to be able to make up the difference, and PattyMac crushes the army.
Sheesh, I mean, this was so risky and so sudden. I think if you replay that moment a few times and you know that it's coming, if you're Future, you know you don't get hit center mass by the one storm and you take that engagement every time. So very reckless from PattyMac, but once again using like the limited attention of his opponent, using surprise to his advantage, where he could have just sat back and waited to absorb a Future that he knows is weaker. He goes out, he seeks him, and he finds him. Is that going to be enough for Patricio, as Future is still very competitive in terms of supply here?
Yeah, what he is lacking is going to be as fast of a third base, but look at this drop timing over here. Remember, there's a lot of warp gates, so PattyMac will be able to warp in quite a few units inside the main base once his warp gets off cooldown. But that on top of the recall, it does seem like he's going to be able to probably clean this up pretty quickly.
Yeah, pretty nice blink forward there, but unfortunately picks off the one medevac that didn't have any units in it. The only one that was available to his credit. to get picked off, as now PattyMac is going to continue to move out. Good vision out on the map as well from PattyMac, so kind of organizing himself to absorb, which is exactly what he needs to do right here, right now. And yeah, he has corralled Future back into his base for the time being. So the problem, Ravi, that I'm seeing here, and yeah, it seems like a little bit of a recurring issue, is PattyMac maybe giving Future a little bit too much respect, and he's holding a little bit too much respect, and he's still not finding that economic lead that you would expect from all of these exchanges, right? Like there should be, I feel like, a fourth and maybe a little bit more of a worker gap than just the 6.
Yeah, I think this is kind of what I was talking about, where I feel like PattyMac gets very focused on the fights, and I think that he is dominating a lot of these fights, and he's doing a great job with storms and everything. But yeah, he's not necessarily like, yeah, right now is a good example where he's not really making any workers behind this. He is still going for a 4th. He's getting up transitionary tech with the double robo for Colossus and everything, but it does seem like he is just really trying to hyper focus on his army, and it's kind of cutting into his ability to just get further ahead economically.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with you on this front right now. I think that this is probably not a stylistic choice, right? He should have been producing a few more workers, especially as soon as he starts taking that 4th. But yeah, as it stands, I mean, he has taken good engagements. Is it going to be enough? As regardless of that fact, he is now trailing behind in supply. Future at the natural and looking to go into the 4th base. Should PattyMac abandon that post, but he's actually going to be plenty ready here at this ramp. So he will deflect Future on the left and pushing back on the right as well. So looking okay on defense for PattyMac, but again, the supply revs, it's not looking too great for him.
No, it's not. And it's a bit unfortunate because it felt like PattyMac had secured himself a really nice lead earlier on, absolutely crushing the attack that Future was getting geared up for. And now we're in a weird spot where Future's going to have his 1-1 done, is going to have an army supply lead, still has a 3rd base, and granted, it's the tucked away back in 3rd base that has fewer mineral patches, 1 less gas guys and everything. But it does feel like Future, even with a 4th base finishing up, has Ghost out on the way. He's got all the tools he needs to actually crush this next engagement. This is an anti-timing move out from PattyMac.
Yeah, I don't think he intends. I hope he doesn't intend on moving out, as he has those disruptors coming up as well. So, but he is morphing Archons right now here at the forefront of the map. So maybe he is indeed looking for that engagement. I think right now you just sit back if you're PattyMac. 2 Templars are not in that War Prism. 1 more is going to be available to be dropped. It will have to be dropped just because the War Prism was so low. Ends up getting picked off by that turret as 1 good storm lands. Another one, the EMP is not there for now.
Yeah, the Ghosts actually moved forward. I thought that they were in range for the EMPs, but they don't actually have the energy for it. He's a few energy away from the Ghost.
Now the Disruptors are here, but he uses them both.
Okay, there's 1 Ghost. It's looking for an EMP.
What was that storm?
I think maybe to try and zone out the Vikings, maybe? But yeah,
I'm not sure,
not
but
great.
Good storm here. However, he has more available. Now he can morph. 1 more storm available soon, but not quite yet. Another one that's coming from behind, but it's too late, as the engagement has already been taken by a Future that just kind of stood in it, showered in the storm, and it did not seem to matter too much. However, PattyMac does close the gap in terms of supply, and does have that 4th available to him as well. So
it's mostly worker supply, though, because a lot of workers got pulled off the line for Future to make that defense happen. True. And he's doesn't really have that many medevacs with a lot of energy to heal up, nor does he feel like he has a lot of time to heal up. So this army is October, spooky orange and yellow. And I really am a bit afraid that there's just going to be 1 more High Templar sitting back at home or something that will be able to just annihilate this army yet again. Yeah,
but Future has Overstim. That is kind of one of his... I don't want to call it a signature move, but he does like stimming a lot, you know, like and kind of getting in there. And right now his army is all in the red, and what you called the October orange, right? And all in the red, but he needs to kind of just chill for a bit right now, I think. Now remaking those ghosts as well, anticipating that PattyMac might have warped in some Templars, but I could understand the idea to not make ghosts beforehand if he thought he was just going to win with that push. And if there wasn't going to be Storm available for PattyMac. Regardless, PattyMac is not actually remaking those Templar, but rather just switching onto the Disruptor deck. And yeah, this game will sort of stabilize.
In a really weird way, yeah. I do think that Future is still in a little bit rougher of an economic position, but if you can stabilize a little bit longer, if you can up a good size army and not take a big disruptor hit. That's gonna complicate things a little bit, because here's my problem right now with Future's position is I feel like PattyMac is getting up all of the tech, catching up on upgrades, actually getting ahead in upgrades now with 2-2 started up, and he's also been able to out-expand Future. He did all of this after I think he was down at almost half the army supply at Future. But Future was like so stemmed up. He couldn't safely move across the map and attack. So this is a big snag for Future. I think if he can find more snags like this, I'm going to have more faith that Future can pull himself back into this game. But right now, I'm a little bit worried still.
Yeah, I mean, definitely justification for being worried there, as the medevacs are going to try to juke the army. He will scan that as well, but the Vikings will tell the medevacs, hey, that's a no-go zone. So is there really anywhere to go? Not really. A couple of those medevacs should get taxed. One only will fall, as there is disruptors out on the map. I thought that might have been stalkers for PattyMac that could maybe intercept these, but not the case. Disruptors instead are going to be looking for a little bit of a flank. These Widow Mines are going to be nasty good though for Future, as they're all going to connect onto Stalker. Here come the disruptors, and this time Future doesn't run towards them, so that's good.
And Semi does not decide to try and right-click them down before they all go off. I think it's just a few too many disruptors to count on a strategy like that to work out. These disruptors are going to just clear the pathway, knowing that he can move up that ramp. The Liberator's going to have an important role.
One of them does get chipped off, but not completely picked up or picked off. And now Future finds himself in a position where maybe he can find a favorable position by zoning out with his Liberators and make it difficult for PattyMac to engage. That's exactly what's going to happen here. PattyMac is going to take the other avenue back to try to defend his fourth or his fifth, but it's going to be a little bit too late for that by the looks of it. The Stalkers do blink forward to make room for the Celos to push on as well, and the Disruptors will get rid of the Widow Mines, but not before the fourth is denied. So job accomplished from Future there.
Yeah, and I'm actually really surprised he managed to make it out alive with his army. I really thought he was going to maybe get pinned back in, but now even controlling that high ground location, Disruptors will eventually allow PattyMac to move up, but it is at a cost. He ends up losing a handful of Disruptors to those two Liberators before they end up falling, and Future is just going to play Ring Around the Rosie yet again. This is the exact same thing that happened earlier, but is PattyMac going to fall for it this time? Is he going to actually... He's going to actually just pull all the way back the long way again.
Yeah, which is maybe unnecessary, right? Especially because he doesn't have a fourth to defend here anymore, but maybe a fifth, but maybe he feels like his fourth could be in peril. Future's gonna try to escape. The one medevac that wasn't loaded is the one that gets picked off, but again, the only one available to PattyMac to pick off. And Future with the same exact juke idea. But PattyMac, I imagine he's gonna be ready again. Nope, not this time around. Future's gonna confirm it with a scan. And will get into the main base where PattyMac is forced to recall.
And he knows that the recall has gone off, so I think Future is probably getting ready to load up into the medevacs at a given moment. He is actually also attacking on the north side. There's not that many Stalkers over here, and it's really mostly just Stalkers. But here come the Colossus, and the Colossus are going to be able to push this army back. Also, the defense happening in the main base at long last. I think these are the wins that PattyMac has been needing for a bit. He has still had a hard time reestablishing that bottom left-hand base, but I think that he's actually done enough over here that he can actually just go across the map and deny the real only important mining base of Future, which is that fourth.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, really good army splitting there from PattyMac. Earlier, he was so heavy on Disruptors. I think that sort of play from Future could have been deadly. But this time around, much more reliant on the Colossus. So he could split his army without problems. And a big Disruptor shot goes into the back of the middle of the army of Future here. Really good EMPs, however, to greet him at the choke. Is that going to be enough? All of these Stalkers are really low. But now the High Templars come here with some potential storms. Future's not going to have enough. He will GG out. And PattyMac will take the series with a fist bump as well to celebrate it.